Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Ben Tolson and this is my weekly Q&A show where I answer questions about making better video content, and we discuss things related to creating videos, anything from equipment and setup to productivity and workflow. So all of the things to help you as a creator make better videos. And I did want to share, and this doesn't matter so much, but I feel like it's worth mentioning just for folks who are maybe tuning in, finding my channel for the first time. I have worked for several years doing making video content for my channel, but I also work full-time working for a software company just running their YouTube channel, and I've helped grow their YouTube channel to 15,000 subscribers and counting. We actually just hit that milestone recently. And if you've been around my content for a while, you might have heard me talk about subscribers before, and I don't feel like that's the most important metric. But it's something people look at. Here's something really cool that happened, and I wanted to share this story with you because I thought it was kind of a testament to, and there's so many stories like this, but this was a testament to the power of creating video content. So someone made a video, just took a quick video of themselves and posted it on Twitter and said, I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to subscribe to or get a plan with Podia. That's the software company I work for. I wasn't sure if I was going to get a plan with Podia, but then I started watching your video content on your YouTube channel, and I started binging through all of the content and just watching video after video. And I haven't even seen everything the product has to offer, but because of the quality of the content, because of how much value you put into the content, I feel like it's a no-brainer. And so they shared that video and they tagged Podia, and so I got to see that, and it was a really cool moment for me. But you can't quantify that kind of experience by the number of subscribers you have. That video and what he said had nothing to do with how many subscribers we have. It had everything to do with the value that he got out of the content. That's where the focus should be. So I just thought that was a really cool story. One more update and then we will dive into our questions. And just to give you a heads up, the format of this show, it's a pretty quick live show. Usually runs between 30 and 45 minutes. And I answer 3 questions that I've kind of set up beforehand, and then any other questions that might come in, or discuss any other comments that might come in during the live show in the chat. So if you are watching live, feel free to share your questions or your thoughts in the chat. I would love to address those. And I see you, Simply Obs, and it's good to see you again. We were actually watching another live video a few hours earlier from another YouTube creator, and it's really cool. Like I love how the YouTube community kind of comes together and finds one another, and so it's always encouraging to see familiar people and familiar faces. All right, so last update. This is just on a personal note. I'm going on Monday, so just in a few days, to get my second COVID shot. So getting my last vaccine, and I've heard it's a doozy, but I've also heard other people say that their first one was rough, but their second one was fine. My first one, I had the normal soreness in the arm from the shot, but I'm kind of expecting it to be fine. But next week, it's going to be on Monday, so hopefully by Friday, if I do end up having symptoms, it will have cleared up by then. So I'm not super worried about it, but I thought it'd be good to give you a heads up in case like I was so knocked out that I just needed to take a break. So anyway, and yes, I will definitely drink tons of water. So let's jump into our first question. This question is one that I've addressed before on my channel, but I actually love this question because I feel like it gives me an opportunity to share from some of my own personal experience, and it is, should I upgrade my equipment? I think a lot of creators wrestle with this question, because especially if they see the quality that other creators are producing and feeling like, oh, that, it's, my stuff's just not quite as good. Or if they're watching, like video creators who publish stuff about video equipment and gear and doing gear reviews and stuff. So I follow, at least a dozen channels probably of people who do equipment reviews, and they talk about their new cameras and they talk about like all of this cool equipment. And I'm sitting here with my, I don't have a cheap setup. I probably put $4,000 or $5,000 into the equipment that I have. But when it comes to video equipment, video gear, production equipment of any kind, you can spend tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars if you want to get like really fancy. And so it's tough. It's tough because you look at that and then you look at what you have and you look at what you're producing, and it's hard not to feel like, oh, I wish I could do better. So I love addressing this question, and my quick answer to this question is no and yes. No, you shouldn't upgrade your equipment just for the sake of upgrading. And I also think that it's like, no matter what, it's always good to continue to grow in your skill. Put the focus there. Put the focus on improving your ability to produce the best with what you have. But then, yes, if you have the means to get better equipment, like if you're a new person just starting out, but you've got like hundreds of thousands of dollars, like you're wealthy and you could just go and get the best equipment, like, yeah, go and get the best equipment for sure. But if you're starting out and you don't have a lot of cash and you're kind of like, working with a $500 camera, but feeling like, oh, if I don't upgrade, like, no, hold off, save up for something that is going to match the skills that you were able to build during the time you had the $500 camera, so that's kind of my short answer. But I also like to ask a few questions, and I feel like these questions help sift through the different, like individual scenarios, because there's not a like answer that satisfies every one person's circumstances. So one of the most important questions I think to answer is, are you committed? Is this something that you are committed to doing on a regular basis? Like, are you going to be producing videos every single week for the next several years, and you're like laser focused on that and that's what you're going to do? Well, then I think, and this is, so it's kind of funny, like when I was writing that answer, I thought about my kids, and our oldest, he going into 7th grade decided he wanted to get into orchestra and start playing the violin. And violin's not a cheap instrument. So we went to like a local store and we did kind of a rent to own thing. And so started making payments. And this was the beginning of his 7th grade year. And he was doing great. And he was like learning his violin skills and stuff. And he got into 8th grade. And then about halfway through the year, he was like, I don't think I want to do this anymore. which is fine. You know, like I know how it goes when it comes to like creative passions and exploring things and stuff like that. But we're still making payments on that violin. So we're like looking at our younger kids like, so any of you interested in playing the violin? And if they're not, I'm going to have to take it up so that we can justify the cost. But it's kind of like that. Like we had a conversation with him in the beginning and we're like, hey, you know, how serious are you about this? Is this something that you just want to try out? Or like, did you watch a ton of YouTube videos about people playing violins and discovered, you know, at the age of 13 that you want to play, you know, violin for the rest of your life? And so like, even though we bought a violin, like we went for the cheap one. It wasn't like, oh, we're going to get the really nice, you know, $10,000 violin. I think you can even pay like $50,000 or $60,000. So I feel the same way about equipment. Like you have to answer that question for yourself. How committed are you? Is this something that you're just exploring? Or, you know, like even if you're making videos, but like the focus of your content isn't necessarily video, like the focus of your content is something else. Is video content marketing and using platforms like YouTube to share videos and build a community, is that something you're committed to? And if so, then that makes a good case for improving your equipment as you're able to. So the next question I would answer is, what kind of audience are you serving? So when it comes to upgrading, or when it comes to the quality of your videos, your equipment definitely makes a difference. So like I actually brought this over. This is a Canon 7D and it shoots 1080p video, is its highest resolution. So it doesn't go to 4K, but it does produce a beautiful image. And I was vlogging with this for a long time, and when I started making regular video content like this, where it was like talking head stuff, I would set this up and I would use it. But I ran into some problems, like this particular camera, it times out, it overheats eventually and has to shut off. And then you have to wait a few minutes and then you can turn it back on. So it couldn't do like long form continuous recording. I also had trouble, the output isn't a clean output. It has all of the information on there and stuff. So if I wanted to monitor it, I would see all of that extra stuff on the screen and I couldn't use it as like a webcam, where right now I'm using my GH5 as a webcam, and it has an option to send the HDMI signal with no extra stuff on the screen. So that's like super helpful. And then the fact that it's not 4K. And so anyways, all of that stuff to say, my primary audience and kind of the purpose of my content is to help people improve their video quality. And so because that's my focus, I felt like the quality that I'm producing with my videos should be at least at a professional, what people perceive as like a professional level, right? So I could absolutely produce content with this camera and it would look good. It would actually look really good because I know a lot of the principles with lighting and stuff like that, but it's just not, it doesn't quite have the same polish that I'm able to produce with this better camera that I've upgraded to. So, so that's another good question to answer. If you're making content like Mr. Beast, where you're just like, you know, having fun and doing more entertainment-based stuff, it's not quite as important to have a really nice camera. But the kind of equipment you'll need might be different too. So like, I know he uses GoPros and does drone shots and stuff like that. So like for that kind of content, there are some other considerations that he'll have with his equipment. So those are just that's just another great question to answer, is when you're thinking about whether or not you should upgrade your equipment, you want to consider, will it make a difference to the audience I'm serving? Does the quality I'm able to produce with what I have match the expectation that my audience will have of my content? All right, and then this is kind of related to the last thing that I was talking about with this camera, and the question is, what is your workflow? Sometimes upgrading your equipment doesn't just have to do with the quality you're able to produce, but it has to do with making it easier to make video content. And so, for example, like I said, I used the HDMI output on this, and I'm able to monitor my shot, and that makes it a lot easier to kind of set up my shot and make sure that I'm framed properly and that the lights look okay. And it saves me time in my workflow. This old Canon 7D uses CF cards, and so I had to use an adapter, and the adapter it didn't read very quickly. Whereas the SD cards that I have in this camera, I can pop those right into my laptop and it reads the file right away. So that saves me a little bit of time. And so it's little things like that. So that's another good thing to consider with your equipment, is if it's something that might be an investment for you right now, but it's going to save you 5 minutes every time you sit down and make a video, that 5 minutes is going to add up over months and years. So I think in that case it's worth it. It's by the way, you may or may not be able to hear it, but it is raining over here. It's been like a super rainy week, and a couple of nights ago we had a big thunderstorm and tornado warnings. So you might hear a little bit of rain, just some ambience in the background. So, and then the last thing I want to say about equipment is there's a particular order, I think, when it comes to equipment that, depending on the kind of content you're creating, but in almost every case, the first thing you should upgrade, if you're able to, is your audio. And when it comes to watching videos, people are actually more tolerant of poor video quality than they are of poor audio quality. For whatever reason, like when you're watching something and the sound is bad, maybe there's a lot of background noise or static, or there are a lot of plosives, like they're maxing out the volume in the microphone. It makes it really difficult to sit and enjoy the content. And I know that, just from my own personal experience, probably about half of what I watch, I'm just listening to and not actively watching. And so I treat YouTube like a podcasting platform sometimes. So all of that to say, improving your audio quality is going to, it goes a lot further to increase the perception of quality and professionalism for your videos. So yeah, audio first. And I think that is it for that first question. I know that's not like a super definitive answer, but I feel like asking those questions and kind of thinking about it, from that perspective for your own circumstances is a great way to answer that for yourself. All right, the next question: how do I get past the need to reinvent the wheel? This question was actually longer, but it didn't fit all like on the top of my screen up there. So the thing that they were kind of getting at was this idea that every time they get in front of the camera, or like every time they set up to record a video, Hey Keshna, it's good to see you. Um, they every time they get in front of the camera, they feel like, maybe something in their background needs to be adjusted, or they don't like the direction the camera is pointing, or maybe they want to do something different with the lighting, or maybe they want to try a different space in their house. And this is something that I've struggled with a lot before. And it kind of, I don't know, like in some ways, I don't know if it's maybe related to some kind of pathology where it's like, I need to find the perfect spot. Working for a software company, for a brand where it's like, the quality that I'm producing, I feel like almost has to be even better than what I would create just for myself. And so I got really obsessive about, okay, where am I going to set up and where am I going to point my camera? And it seemed like every week I was spending an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, like trying different things out and looking through the camera lens and like adjusting the focus and doing all of these things to ultimately end up just like back where I was. And so I'm super familiar with that struggle. But I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing to want to improve the appearance of your shot, want to test out different places in your home or in your office, wherever to set up to see what does it look like through the lens if I point my camera at this wall instead of that wall. I think that's great. The problem I was having was I was often doing this thing that I call procrasti working. And you may have heard that term before, but it's like, it's busy work, and you kind of trick yourself into thinking, oh, I'm accomplishing something, I'm getting something done. But you're not really doing the stuff and spending time on the stuff that you need to get done. You're kind of doing this in place of those other things. So so it's tough. And like I said, I think it's absolutely worthwhile, but it can become something that gets in the way of you actually producing something. I think if I didn't have deadlines that I had to meet with Podia, there were weeks where I was so dissatisfied with what I was seeing through the camera that I was like, I feel like I just don't want to make a video this week because I'm not in love with the way it looks. So I think for a lot of creators, they experience that. They think, if I can't find the perfect setup, then I can't get started. And so I just want to say, like, don't do that. Just find something and get started, and iterate as you go. And instead of, coming to your video creation time and getting distracted by how things look through your camera and wasting time messing with that, schedule time, and be intentional and say, okay, maybe once a month, I'm going to schedule 3 hours where all I need to do is mess with my setup and see what things look like through the lens and see if I can find a different angle that I like better. The great thing about that is you're not doing that in place of the work that you should be doing. It's something that you're scheduling. And one of the things I love about things that are scheduled, when they're on a calendar, when you've written it down, when it's something that is, like you've actually thought ahead toward, your brain kind of works in the background on that thing. That's what I love about scheduling topics, because the brain is so amazing at kind of doing that background work that really enriches what you do. And so you might come to that 3 hour session that you scheduled for yourself, and already have some great ideas instead of just like, coming into it accidentally and being like, oh, I don't like this, but I don't know what I'm looking for. Like you might actually have some great ideas that you can implement. So, so schedule it. And then I think like once a month might actually be a little bit too frequent. You might actually do like once every other month, maybe even once a quarter. And the reason for that is because one of the things people value when they're watching videos, especially like this, if you're trying to share valuable information, there's this kind of comfort that comes from seeing the person that you're getting information from in the same environment for, consistently. So, and it's a little thing, but I think it's meaningful. So if you're switching like, every week you've got a different backdrop, I think it's fine. Like, I don't think you're going to scare people away, but I think that does tend to undermine a little bit of that like connection and feeling of familiarity that you want to that you want to develop in your audience. And so maybe once every 3 months, if you're changing your backdrop and changing your look and everything like that, I think that's fine. So, all right. And then the last question, and then we'll get into, I want to address Keshna's comment here about camera and backdrop. So the last question is, should I pose or use a screenshot for my thumbnail? Or I should say it like this: should I pose or should I use a screenshot for my thumbnail? I'd pose, because trying to find a good screenshot, trying to find a good spot in your video where like you didn't have one eye half closed, and like I've done that before where I forget to take a picture and it's like, I'm running up against the deadline and I need to publish something, and all I have to work with is like what I've been doing in the video. And it's hard to find something, one, that looks good, and two, that conveys maybe the kind of emotion or like idea that you are wanting to put into your thumbnail to get clicks. So it saves you the time of doing that, like sifting through your video. But I will say this: I think when you do pose, like, and you capture that image, you can be a lot more intentional. And I'm a big fan of intentionality, especially when it comes to thumbnails. And I don't do this very well yet on my personal channel because I've really squeezed this into the margins. But for the stuff that I do for Podia, I think about it ahead of time, like what ideas I have. I pose for that specific thumbnail, and then I spend probably a good hour to 2 hours designing and tweaking and making sure that the thumbnail looks the way that I want it to look, so that it'll be compelling and people will actually click on it. So I like the idea of really being intentional about what your thumbnail is going to do, because that is the cover that people are judging the book by, right? So like you've heard the saying, people don't judge a book by its cover. And that's a great saying for human beings, but when it comes to actual books, it is not true. Because if you've never read a book before, all you have to go off of is the cover and the title, or a friend who like raved about how amazing it was. But if you don't have that friend who raved about how amazing it was, and people are making a decision, scrolling through their search results or looking at the suggested videos, and they're trying to make that quick decision about, do I click on this video and risk a few seconds of my time, or a minute of my time, or 5 minutes of my time on what this person might have to share with their video content? the thumbnail and the title are the things that make that decision. So they're a big deal. And so because they're such a big deal, I really like the idea of posing, and finding a pose that does what you want your thumbnail to do, that conveys what you want your thumbnail to convey, to get people to click. So yeah, I think that covers it. I could talk a lot about thumbnails and YouTube strategy stuff, so I'm going to have to definitely work that into my content as well. So I wanted to address this comment from Keshna. I know we talked about whether or not you should upgrade your equipment. So Keshna said, I've been wanting to purchase a new camera for some time and a backdrop. And I have to say too, like, I love the camera that I have, but I've also got my eye on like the next one. And I'm pretty happy with my backdrop, but I'm also aware of like, there are other things that I might want to do. And yes, Keshna, these videos are going to be available for replay. I'm doing this live right now, but it's also going to be on my YouTube channel. So, like, and I've got a long list. Like, I want to get a better microphone. I want to get better lights. I've got a ton of things on my list. But I'm not in a place right now financially where I can fulfill all of those things. And so I think that a lot of creators are in that situation. You know, they're in that circumstance. They recognize that they could improve the quality of what they're producing if they could upgrade their equipment, and are just kind of in a place where they're stuck because they either don't have the financial resources, or maybe they're kind of, you know, waiting for a specific piece of equipment to come out, to be released, whatever. And so I think in that case, the best thing you can do is to continue to improve on your skills and your understanding of things like how lighting works, understanding how your specific camera works, and understanding the settings and how to get the most out of them. Learning about how white balance works and how to set that properly on your camera, how to set contrast, and how to get the best sound for your room. You know, how to do sound treatment for your room if you're getting too much echo. Like, there are lots of things that you can do that don't necessarily require spending money, but can improve the quality of what you're doing with what you have. And the great thing about that, the great thing about making time and making an effort to improve on those skills, is when you do get the better camera, or you do get the better microphone, or you do get the better lights, you're already in a position where you're going to be able to use those to their full potential. A beginner with, you know, a $10,000 camera is probably not going to produce an image as nice as a professional, a master with, you know, a $1,000 camera, because the level of understanding is so different. And so that's, you know, that's an extreme example, but I'm a big fan of, like, get the most you can out of what you have. Upgrade if you can, if you have the means to do that, absolutely, but always be working to get the most out of what you have. So, Keshna, thank you so much for that comment. And Simply Obs, thank you for sticking around. I appreciate y'all hanging out and sharing some comments and encouragement. And I think that's going to do it for us today. This was, so I don't, I guess like I'm seeing it, so I'm sure you can see. I've got this like blue thing around and the questions across the top here. That's kind of a new thing I threw together for this. And so I'm thinking that I'm going to keep kind of iterating on this, but I like the live videos to kind of have a different look from, you know, from the other content on my channel where I do more like full frame, like it's, I'll show you real quick, where it's like that. So I would love to hear your thoughts about what, I've got kids singing in the background. But I'd love to hear your thoughts about like, what do you think of the look of this? Does it feel a little bit weird? Just trying out new things. So, oh, and I did want to address this one more thing. Keshna said, I understand what you're saying. My camera is my phone, but it makes sense. And yeah, so, the phone is such an interesting, like, it's such a different piece of camera equipment than my DSLR. Like there are settings that I can really dial in and lock in, but like this has technology in it that the DSLR does not have, like image processing technology. And so like it's more advanced in some ways and then like useless for other things. So I get the struggle that you're having, Keshna, but I do encourage you to keep trying to maximize the quality you're able to produce with your camera. There are things that you can do, like just with your iPhone, to get more consistent quality, to get a better look out of it. Things that you can do with lighting and stuff like that. So, gosh, Keshna, like you're bringing all the great comments and stuff. So I'm gonna save this for the next one where you said, I think sometimes I don't know what the next thing is to learn. I feel like that a lot of creators kind of struggle with that. Like they know they need to improve, but they're not sure what to focus on next. So yeah, I really appreciate that. I'm going to save that. All right. Well, I'm going to bid you adieu and thank you again so much for tuning in. And we will see you next week, same time, same place. Have a good one.